Welcome again to another video around data governance. Matt, after producing 1 week videos with me, what we will see in this session?
So in this video, we're basically going to talk about the differences in data governance in this new version in 7.02 between the previous versions of data governance. So there's some key differences in the look and feel in the UI around how you deploy agents. So I'm going to talk about those. Also, there's some new platforms as well that are under support in this new version. So we'll talk about that as well.
Cool. So that means at the end, it is not the difference between the 6.x and the 7.0 world. It is the difference between 7.0.1, which was the first approach, and then 7.0.2, which is now coming with the new stuff.
Correct.
Okay, let's go.
In this video, I'm going to talk about some of the key differences between DGE version 7.02, which is the new version, and previous versions of DGE like 7.01, 7.0, and you can actually see on the screen that I have side-by-side instances of both. So on the left-hand side, I have my One Identity Manager / DGE install version 7.01. And on the right-hand side, you can see version 7.02. And here, we have selected the data governance managed host node, right? So over here, you can see managed host, data governance. And over here on the 7.0, same thing, data governance, managed host. So they're both highlighting the same view. Obviously, radically different. By default, when you're in 7.01, and I'll just use 7.01 going forward, I'll say 7.01 and earlier versus 7.02, or 7.0 Service Pack 1. By default, when you deploy DGE, there's no agents deployed, nothing has changed since then, but you don't see anything in the list. Nothing goes into the list of managed hosts until you actually add one. So here's my window where I would normally add a managed host. I have to pick the type of host it is, right? Here's locally managed Windows computer, and I'm going to go ahead and add my current machine, right? I just want to deploy an agent locally right here to this machine. No problem. I'll turn on resource activity just in case we need it later, but there we go. And then I go save. Easy as that. And then now I have something in the list, right? So 7.01, we're deploying an agent, but you actually have to select the machine that you want to deploy. Once it's there, it adds in the list. In 7.02, on the right-hand side, at this point, we actually see more than just the machines that I've deployed agents to. I actually have a list of all the machines that have been added in my domain that are of a supported platform type in DGE. So the difference here is quite significant. It's in 7.01, nothing appears in the list. You have to add specifically resources. In 7.02, we show all of your resources, and you can actually right-click on a machine in the list and go manage host, right? You can also multi-select. I can select this machine and this machine and this machine, and I can right-click and I can go manage multiple hosts. And by doing that, it actually will deploy agents to these machines with the same settings, right? So in 7.01, we had this concept of add multiple managed hosts right here. This is the add multiple managed host wizard, right? It's just this dialog where you can multi-select managed hosts. We don't have that anymore in 7.02. In 7.02, multi-select is all you need, right? So I can multi-select machines, go manage, and then set the properties. Now let's take a look at the properties of the managed host. So here, let's go change master data, right? And then we're going to go to this machine in 7.02, and let's look at the host settings for this guy. Wow, they've changed. So now, before, you'd have this view over here. For those of you who are familiar with DGE, very common. You have your general tab, agent details, if you have multiple agents, etc. for remote host. The scanning schedule, right? For a local, Basically, the only thing you could do was delay security scan. You could say my local agent only deploys at 2 o'clock in the morning. Resource activity, it's either enabled or disabled with aggregation and security index routes if you have specific routes. Now I'm going to talk through these side by side. Don't worry, I went through that a bit fast. But in 7.0.2, Service Pack 2, you can see there's only 3 tabs here. There's Managed Paths, Security Scanning, and Resource Activity. So let's show you exactly what I mean. So here, Managed Paths is basically security index routes. So if I configure a security index route for this local agent, so I'm going to pick something similar. I have a data directory over here. I'm going to go OK and go save. This is basically the same thing. So your security index routes in 701 are your managed paths in 702. But basically, it's the same thing. You can select different managed paths in 702 to watch and to monitor, watch for activity, etc. Just so you understand, security index routes is now managed paths. Security scanning. Let's go to scanning schedule over here. So scanning schedule in 701 for a local agent would basically allow you to do a delay of a security scan and when that initial scan takes place. But after that, a local agent is just going to scan constantly. It's going to scan initially and then watch for changes. It's just the default behavior of a local Windows. In 702, we've extended scanning schedule to actually apply to all managed host types, right? So here for a local agent, you can choose when it's going to start. You can specify run daily, run on an interval. You can say run only once if you're interested in just running initially, and then after that maybe you want to do some things with that security, but just an initial scan, and then you can modify that later. So you can see that just for a local agent there's a lot more options there. And the same view for security scanning for remotes as well will appear here as well. So we try to be consistent between all of our managed resource types. Now, if I go back to, it's hard to see here because I don't have a specific managed host that's like that, but all of the settings for scanning, security specifically are here. So immediately scan on agent restart, or when managed paths changed or security index routes change. This is new. Ignore all files and only store folder security data. This was a configuration setting in previous versions of DGE, basically configured through the registry, but now it's right there. You can see it, this setting in the managed host settings, and the default behavior is to ignore files, to only scan those high-level containers, your shares, your folders, and assuming that files inherit the security from their parent. Doesn't mean they do, but to increase the speed of the scan, obviously this is very important. Nothing stops you from unchecking that though and doing a full scan, including your files. And then this is just real-time security updates, collect activity for real-time security updates, which means it'll monitor for those changes in terms of security. And if anything happens where a security change takes place, it's going to update the agent security database. So that's what that means. Resource activity, I'm going to skip over to resource activity over here. The biggest difference here is that now in 702, you can specify the individual activities that you're interested in monitoring and aggregating directly in the managed host settings. Previous to that, you actually had to go to individual agents and modify configuration files. Not very user-friendly. 702, we've brought those activities right into the front, into the managed host settings. So very important that you can actually change those settings right here. The aggregation, let's look at 701, whole bunch of different settings here. 1 minute, 2 minute, 3 minute, 30 minutes, etc., etc. A lot of options. Well, we've simplified that substantially. So now in 702, we have just these 4. We have 5 minutes, 1 hour, 8 hours, and 1 day. And those are your aggregation options, right? We've tried to simplify that substantially. Okay, So those are your managed host settings. Now, one thing before I close this is that if you have something like a NetApp filer or an EMC device, then your managed host settings may contain additional tabs depending on the platform that you may need to supply more information, right? So for some sort of remote device, some NAS device, in the case of EMC, you might have to set some credentials or something, or NFS is a better example where you might have to specify credentials to the API. So other than that, that's the differences between managed host settings. So let's close that. I'm not interested over here. The next thing I want to talk about is account comparison and account simulation. So let's go over to our menu. And actually, let's start talking about something else, because this is important before we start talking about that. So here you can see I've pinned the data governance menu. Right away, you can see that there's some changes there, right? You can see that some of the text has changed. Some of it's the same. Managed hosts, that's the same. Users and groups is no longer there. Users and groups, here, you can see that it just showed you a list of accounts coming out of the QAM trustee table. Now we have security index. So not only does it load accounts from the QAM trustee, and let me unpin this because this is a totally brand new, we have this new security index view. The security index view shows you a breakdown of accounts that have been found to be directly ACLed on resources versus those that have been not found to be directly ACLed on resources, right? So from this view, a data governance administrator then has a lot more capabilities within the product. For example, here I'm going to select this account here, which is Pam Green. And now from any account, I have these options: account access report, account activity report, account comparison, account simulation, and manage access. These are available for all of the accounts that happen to be in either the security index, which means they have explicit permissions, or in no. So if you go in no, these are all other accounts that are in Dell 1. They're synchronized via Active Directory synchronization or SharePoint synchronization, but they may not be explicitly ACLed anywhere. So this is a brand new view with a whole bunch of options, and you can actually run those reports, those common reports, on any account that's in this view. Really helpful for a data governance administrator if you're being asked to find out where a particular account has access, but that account isn't necessarily ACLed directly on resources, right? So all of those are available. Now, what I was just about to talk about before I show the security index view is account comparison and account simulation. Now we have that. We have that over here, and I'm going to pick an account in 701. Let's find BMuse, Matico BMuse. That's a great account. That's my cat, Brandy Muse. And we have account comparison, but we didn't have account simulation directly. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you the view. This is the view for account comparison. So we'll do the same thing over here, account comparison. So it sort of looks the same, right? You pick a source, you pick a target, you pick some resource types, you pick some hosts, etc., and then you go compare. The difference is here that in 702, you choose, do you want to compare explicit and indirect or explicit only? That's new. The source and the target are the same, so I'm going to pick a target. I'm going to compare P Green to this account. So let's do this. So I'm going to find that account. And over here, I'm going to pick an account as well. So let's do a side-by-side comparison of account comparison, right? And let's compare BMuse to MMuse. Let's compare my cat to myself over here. This isn't really comparing apples to apples. I understand that, but let's do it anyway. And then, of course, I can do expand group membership, where I can pick different accounts here, right? And again, over here, we're still in 701. You have to, in 701, select at least one resource type, and at least one managed host, right? Whereas over here, the default behavior is to run the account comparison on all resource types and all hosts. Now you can change that if you want. I'm going to leave it as is, right? And then I'm going to go ahead in both sides and I'm going to go compare. And hopefully some interesting information comes up there. And I'm going to go compare over here. And hopefully some interesting information appears over here. So here we have the results over here in 701. And there you go. There's your results. Now, the difference here is we've actually done some better grouping. We've actually fixed some issues with the account comparison as well. So we find that the results are a lot more easy to read. For example, here in 702, you can see that on this machine, you can see that P Green, instead of saying over here source account holder, it's right in the title. Pam Green has access to sister stuff, and J Gillis _ alt has access to other sister stuff. So very, very different access right there via their membership in different groups, but they also have similar access, and we highlight those as well. But the similar access necessarily, it maybe not be as important as the different access, because I want to find out where are these two people different. We highlight the differences, but you can also see the similarities as well.